So, thank you everyone. We will begin this last roundtable of our day. So this roundtable will be about research and governance. Our animator today for this roundtable will be Bobi Steele, a PhD student in anthropology at McGill University. So I say no more, and I will let Bobi doing his animating job. So thank you, everyone.
Hello, thank you, Emile. Wajia, bonjour, hi. I don't know, Nadia, if you can actually see me. Oh, you can see me on the Zoom, I hope.
I do, yeah. I just saw your hand there and your foot.
Perfect. I'll try and lean in a bit when I'm talking to you. It's just so I can see the Zoom up here as well. Yes, welcome. You've made it to the last roundtable of the day. We have 3 panelists, as you can see, in front of you. I'm going to leave them to introduce themselves, hopefully relatively briefly, but take as much as you need to say what you wish about yourselves. Maybe we can begin with Nadia Saganash on Zoom.
Sure.
Go next. Okay. Will you take the microphone, Nadia?
So all is good. I can start.
Yep, go for it.
Okay. I actually, good evening, everyone. Nadia Saganash, nee. I am currently in Nibishi. I apologize for not being there today with you guys. I wish I would be. But I'm here with my team. Guys, open your cameras. So I'm here with my team, the Environment Department team of the Cree Nation government. We are having our staff meeting, planning with all of our environment team. So I'm not sure if you can see them. Oh, they're just popping up there slowly.
Yes, hello and welcome to everyone.
So yeah, I have done where to start. Waswanipi. I come from Waswanipi. Studied in down south. Grew up down south. Studied in at McGill, wildlife biology. Soon mother of 2 children, and have worked for the Cree Nation for the last 20 years, specifically in implementation of Section 24, the hunting, fishing, and trapping regime. A lot of challenges there. So I'm here to share a bit of my experience and recommendations, perspective about the JBNAQ implementation, Section 24, as well as discussions about research as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Nadia. Do you want to give a very brief rundown of who's joining us from your team on Zoom, who's just popped up?
Sure, we have a big team here. We have our wildlife unit. We have our environment remedial works unit. We have our environmental impact assessment unit. We have climate change unit as well. Who am I missing? Land use planning, protected areas, mining, GIS. So we have a big team here with us at the Cree Nation government in charge of implementing different sections of the JBNQA, Section 22, 24. The land regime, Alan is here as well with Cameron. So yeah, a big team here. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be doing my presentation or my 10-minute talk, but yeah, let me know.
Just the introduction for them. We'll introduce the other 2, and then I'll come back to you in a second. But thank you so much for the intro, and welcome to the huge team you have with you as well. Next, we'll go to Serge
Do I have to pick this up or do anything else?
I think so, yeah, if you can hold it.
Good, thank you. My name is Paul Wilkinson. I'm not known for being brief about anything, but I will try and make an exception for today. My training is in prehistoric archaeology, which is not something that I have ever really used. My role in Quebec over the years began when I was part of the Naskapi team under John Mamiamscombe negotiating the Northeastern Quebec Agreement. I worked with the Naskapis from 1975 until 2009. A big part of my work, which is not always known, was also with the Inuit. And in fact, in my later years, most of my work was in the field of environmental impact studies, and that began with the Inuit. I was the Inuit representative on the federal panel that reviewed military low-level flying in Quebec and Labrador. I worked with Johnny Adams when National Defense had a proposal to start a forward operating location in Kuujjuaq, and then I worked on the environmental impact assessments of airport and port projects in the Inuit territory. I thought Jasmine was going to be monitoring today's this workshop, and I had asked her for about 1 minute because there are two things that I want to mention. They're not really anything very much to do with me, but I want to make sure that they are not forgotten. And the first of them happened in 1978, and it was the creation of the Nunavik Research Laboratory in Kuujjuaq by the Northern Quebec Inuit Association. The second was in 1980, and that was also by the Inuit, the creation of the Avatak Cultural Institute. In my experience, I've never been a part of either body, but I have worked with them very closely in many ways, and they are unique and wonderful creations, and it's a source of regret to me that I think they have really had very little impact in terms of inciting other First Nations over the years to create similar organizations. I know that Senator Watt gave his blessing for the start of this, and I always think of Johnny Peters as having been another person who was very, very, as vice president of Makivik, who was very, very involved in ensuring their implementation. So they're wonderful things, and I hope we'll hear more about them, and I'm glad Senator Watt is here to hear this.
All right. Wajah, Serge Larivière and Sin Kasun, Neon the Hoshian Ojamal. So my name is Serge Larivière. I'm the Director General of the Cree Hunters Economic Security Board. So Chapter 30 of the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement, which was lately ratified in 2019 with Complementary Agreement number 27. And I'm delighted to have in the room here today Monique Caron, who was the previous leader of that organization for 30 years. So you think 50 years of history? I've done the last 20, and before me was Monique Caron, who's in the room today. So between us, we've got this chapter covered. So I'll be glad to talk about it. I'm a wildlife biologist by training, and I've been overseeing this organization whose sole purpose is to keep the traditional lifestyle of Cree people on the land. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, all three of you. Yeah, so this roundtable, as you have likely seen on the program, is about governance, research, and Indigenous lifeways. As Paul mentioned, Jasmine Habib was meant to be moderating, but I believe has got stuck in a snowstorm, am I correct? And could not make it today. So as with Emile earlier, just imagine I'm Jasmine. So she has fortunately also prepared some questions in advance for today, which I believe you have all seen previously. And I may just give you all a quick rundown of those three questions, because I believe we have some presentations prepared, and it might be easier if I tell you the questions and then let them answer the things that they've prepared to speak about. So the first question that Jasmine posed was, what kind of research is needed to implement a treaty and to develop it over time? And she was asking about what kind of information can be made useful through means of research. for things like Eeyou ways of living, for protecting the land and wildlife, for controlling or participating in development, for educating communities, and for developing employment opportunities. And also a question of kind of, are any of these more important than the others? The second question is on collaborative research. What facilitates collaborative research, and what are the challenges that are faced by undertaking collaborative research projects? What research should be done by Indigenous communities, and is there research that necessitates partnership or collaboration with governments and other collaborators such as universities? And the third question asks how Indigenous researchers can play a role in assuring that research conducted with or ostensibly for their communities has served them well and will continue to do so in future, and asks other kind of questions about other appropriate measures in place to guard against the use of information about communities and their land. So I believe, Nadia, you have a presentation, a 10-minute presentation, you said. If you wish to please begin in your answers of these questions. I believe you are still muted if you're speaking.
Okay, so I think I can share a bit of what I've experienced through, well, starting from when I started working for the CNG. And by the way, hi Manon, Monique Caron, sorry. Monique Caron, she was one of the mentors and to me, a lot of the questions, legal implementation, Manon helped me a lot on that. So I want to say hi specifically to Manon, Monique Caron, sorry. Where to start? So the first question is in relation to if research is needed to implement a treaty and to develop it over time. I think it is. A lot of the research that was done has helped a lot. Harvey White, read a lot about Harvey, Colin Scott, a lot of research about the Cree way of life is out there. So in understanding the implementation of Section 24 and how it should be implemented, you need to understand a bit of the Cree way of life and what it meant for the Cree. I guess in my experience, I just want to mention that has been a struggle, you know, implementing Section 24. It hasn't been an easy mandate. And I would say specifically for that section, because we're talking about, in my view, a complicated regime. But there was one thing that I've always relied on, and it was understanding the spirit and the intent of the regime. That was every time we discussed different provisions or had different interpretations, because that was always the battle, how we interpret the agreement, and how we make the government understand when we say, for instance, there's too much sports hunters in the territory. There's a lot of wastage. Limbs, heads of caribou left on the side of the road. To the Cree, that was very difficult to see, because in Cree culture, we don't waste. We eat, we harvest, and we eat every part of the body. And sorry, it's been a long day. So when I was trying to explain that to Quebec, my expectation is that Quebec put in place regulation and stop it. Use your law and regulation. We have a concern. The concern is wastage, over harvesting, lack of monitoring, the lack of surveillance on the territory, and the lack of understanding how the impacts on the Cree. The Cree people couldn't go on the land because they were afraid for their security. That was, it wasn't monitored. They didn't like at the end of this harvest, caribou harvest, to see all of the wastage. And I remember Sam Cox was the one that sent me a lot of pictures about wastage all over. And he was there every year, after every season, picking up, cleaning what was left on the land by the sports hunters. It seemed like a very simple thing to say to Quebec, listen, we don't want to waste. We don't want to see wastage. Can you do something about it? But somehow it went for years and years and years, and nothing was done about it, despite the letters, despite the discussions, until one person came in. And this person, who was a wildlife protection officer, now in charge of the wildlife protection unit, said, well, listen, we'll adopt a regulation obliging all of the sports hunters to bring back the whole of the caribou. So when they register the caribou, they'll need to bring it back in whole or in quarter. I was just astounded because throughout all of these years, this was a very simple solution. But because people weren't hearing and understanding the impacts of it, it became a major issue that could have been avoided way before. So it's very difficult to, understand how is it impacting the Cree? What do they live? So there's a lot of things I can say. I cannot do this in 10 minutes, but caribou was a major issue, and I've heard Justin Picard mentioned about the caribou agreement. This is something that I've worked on many years with Chief Daisy House, and because we were stuck between the modern way of the treaty implementation issue and the cultural values that we cherished, So the cultural side was telling me we need to share, we need to help our neighbors. The treaty side was telling me we need to respect our agreement. If we don't respect our agreement, we're sort of, we're not respecting our agreement. So, and we're opening the door to, a government not to respect. If we can't even respect our own agreement, how can we expect Quebec to respect it? So these were the challenges, and I'm just saying, just two examples, but eventually, thankfully, the cultural side won this battle eventually. So, and we developed this understanding, and I'm going to say understanding because that was the words that were used traditionally. It was always by mutual and understanding. So this was how we termed it. It was a mutual understanding between the Cree and the Innu, enabling the harvest of caribou, which is an important species, an important animal for them and their culture and their identity. So we developed this understanding with the trappers. And I was really surprised because when we came to the Innu, they said, there's no problem. We have no comment with your agreements. We're all for it. All of these principles, these baseline principles that were found in this agreement were about not wasting, were about the fundamental values that we hold as a nation, as a culture. They were about sharing your harvests. They were about, taking care of the animal, respecting the animal. So, and these values are fundamental between many nations. Respecting the animal, respecting the land, sharing, eating all, not wasting anything, any part of the animal. That story is a bit particular because it was really the first time where I guess, and I'm not sure who's in the Kiki dans la salle là? I'm not sure, but it was something that was Quebec had no other choice than to step back because first they couldn't monitor the territory. They're not present on the territory. They have no wildlife protection, not enough at least. I think at the time there were only 4 in that area monitoring the territory. So they stepped back and, didn't get involved or interrupt, I guess, the discussions and the understanding that was going on between the Innu and the Cree. So that was one of the challenges. There's many more challenges, but I guess I'll stop here because I'm taking a lot of time. So I apologize for that. But it's not I would say, in terms of research, I think, and I would like to go over your questions, but I think we won't have time. But what I would say is that I'd like future research to be focusing more on building greater governance of wildlife management in a territory, because I think there's a fundamental problem when we have bureaucrats in Quebec, Sound to Quebec, making decisions, not knowing the land, not being on the land, but making decisions on wildlife and on the land without the real participation of the trappers and the people that know the land. And I want to thank Serge Larivière because he's been implementing the income security program. And it enabled the Cree trappers to be on the land, because that's how you govern. You govern by being on the land and knowing the land and transmitting that knowledge. So thank you, Serge Larivière, for your contribution and your dedication to enabling this program to live. So, well, I guess I just I'll stop here because I think I'm going to go way overboard if I can continue. After 50 years, where we are, I would say I'm just you know, because I'm looking at the term after 50 years. And it's, I'm just going to say one last thing. I wish we could celebrate, you know, the implementation of this 50 years, but it hasn't been that. We all know that it hasn't been easy to implement. And maybe the first 20 years was about, you know, battles to have governments commit to the implementation of the JBNAQ. Then the 20 years after was about interpreting the agreement and what it means and so forth, and how it should be done. So have we been able to implement the agreement fully? No, we haven't. Is there a lot room for improvement? A lot of room. So I would say if research wants to focus on an area or prioritize something, let's prioritize on how we should be helping Indigenous nations increase governance in their own territory and implement. Look at the government's report cards in terms of implementation of treaty agreements and do your research on that. So I'll stop here. That's my final recommendation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nadia. I feel we will have some more questions, hopefully some time for questions in the room soon. So we'll come back to you in a moment. Serge, are you just going to pass to Paul again if I come to you? Okay, we'll go to Paul next.
Good, thank you. Serge obviously has a great deal of power in this work.
Elder respect.
Well, I think I'm quite a bit older than you, actually. Anyway, I just want to make it sure before I answer anything that it is very clearly understood that my answers are my answers. They are not in any respect Naskapi answers. I haven't worked with the Naskapi since 2009, and even when I was working with them, it was the chief and the council and John Mamiamskam's negotiator who expressed Naskapi positions. I'm probably going to come back from time to time to the essential difference between the Naskapis and the Crees and the Inuit. The Northeastern Quebec Agreement is sort of a copier-coller version of the James Bay Agreement applied to the Naskapis. But unlike the Crees and the Inuit, the Naskapis are a single community. They don't represent a larger group. And I think one result of this is that their approach to implementing the Northeastern Quebec Agreement has perhaps been quite different in some respects from the approach of the Crees and the Inuit to implementing the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement. When the Naskapis were accepted as a negotiating partner, they understood that they were going to get a scaled down version of the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement. But there was one thing that they wanted that was not in the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement, and that was a new community. The chief, Louise, spoke to us yesterday a little bit about the history of the Naskapis, and she mentioned that they were moved sort of starting with the arrival of the Hudson's Bay Company at Old Fort Chimo in 1830. They were moved all over northern Quebec at the will of the company, at the will of the government, at everybody's will except their own. At one point, they were associated with Fort Naskapi, which is in the Schefferville area. Then they were associated with Old Fort Chimo in the Kuujjuaq area. Then they were associated with a trading post at Fort Mackenzie, about 70 miles south of Kuujjuaq. They went to Schefferville in 1955. They essentially set off as a group and walked pretty much the whole way, the whole 400 kilometers from Fort Chimo to Schefferville. When they got to Wakuach Lake, which is about 70 miles north of Schefferville, they were sick, tired, ill, because they were men, women, children, elders, all working together. And at the time, very, very few Naskapis older than about 20 spoke either English or French. There was one older person who spoke, quite a few spoke Inuktitut, by the way, because the Naskapis had spent many decades living with the Inuit in the old Fort Chimo and Fort Chimo area. There was one older Naskapi who spoke fairly good English. His name was Sami Pasheen, and he walked down from Wakuach Lake to Schefferville. He alerted the authorities in Schefferville about the situation of the Naskapis, and float planes were sent and other things were done to bring them to Schefferville. As the chief mentioned yesterday, when they got to Schefferville, no one wanted them, no one could care about them. There was no housing, there was no school. Their welcome was decidedly unfriendly. All sorts of things happened that I won't go into, but by 1976, when the Naskapis started to negotiate the Northeastern Quebec Agreement, they were living in what was called the Matimikos Reserve. The Matimikos Reserve had an area of 39 acres. It was on the outskirts of Schefferville, just across the lake from the railway station. And there were about 400 Naskapis. Well, I mean, it's not even that. Just sort of put things into context. When the Naskapis started to negotiate, no one knew how many Naskapis there were. But the financial compensation paid under the agreement was based in part on the number of people. So one of the first things that the Naskapis had to negotiate was how many Naskapis they were. And they negotiated a figure of 400. And I think that was probably quite generous, and they perhaps ended up getting more financial compensation than they might otherwise have done. But the relevant point here is that they were sharing the Matimikos Reserve with the Innu community of Matimikos Lac John. And the Northeastern Quebec Agreement was giving them powers that went well beyond the powers associated with the Indian Act. And it was clear that it was quite unrealistic to have two groups sharing a 39-acre reserve, with one of them having these agreement-determined powers and the other not. And so Section 20 of the Northeastern Quebec Agreement provided for the possibility that the Naskapis would move to a new community all of their own. And the agreement was clear that it had to be within driving distance of Schefferville. And the agreement mentioned 3 sites. One possibility was stay where you are on the Matimikos Reserve. The other was move to John Lake, which was a reserve on the outskirts of Schefferville, where the Naskapis and the Innu had originally lived. And the third was move to another larger, more suitable site. And I'm getting back to research, because the agreement provided for a research program that would identify the site to which the Naskapis could move. And the Naskapis didn't want to stay where they were. They didn't want to go back to the John Lake Reserve because they had already lived there and left it. And so the Naskapis wanted the study to demonstrate that moving to a new location, a bigger location, some distance from Schefferville, would be more suitable for their needs and desires. So that was the priority research that the Naskapis were concerned with, and in the end, they got the result of the studies were done by third-party consultants, not by the Naskapis. They got the result that they wanted, And as Chief Louise mentioned last night, in the early 1980s, they did build their new community, Kawawa Chickamas, and they moved in 1983. They're still living there, and I think it's probably one of the nicer communities in northern Quebec. Another area where the Naskapis were concerned with research was in relation to guaranteed levels of harvesting. Section 24 of the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement provides the Inuit and the Crees with what are called guaranteed levels of harvesting. In other words, subject to the principle of conservation, they can keep on harvesting for the indefinite future the numbers of animals that they were harvesting about the time of the agreement. And the James Bay Agreement provided for a long and immensely complicated research programs for both the Crees and the Inuit to determine how much they were harvesting. And Harvey Fight was a part of that. Bill Camp was a part for the Inuit. Although the Naskapis essentially wanted similar provisions to what the Inuit and the Crees got, they didn't want to be subjected to the same kind of land use and occupancy study. And the reason for that was, as the chief explained last night, they were moved all over the place. They ended up in Shefferville, a mining community started in 1954. And in terms of Naskapi harvesting, it was a lousy place. It was miles from any caribou. It wasn't particularly rich for wildlife, fish, or anything else. So the Naskapis didn't want to have to do a study of what they were harvesting in 1975, 76, 77, because the result would not have been in their favor. And so they did negotiate something of a departure from what the Crees and the Inuit had, and their guaranteed levels of harvesting were calculated more on the basis of their needs than on the basis of what they were doing at the time. So 2 examples of research, and I leave it at that and maybe come back to more when the time comes, and if Serge gives me another opportunity to speak to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Serge?
Yeah, thank you. I told you earlier I was trained as a PhD in wildlife biology, and before I got this job working for Chapter 30, I was doing wildlife research for 20 years. So I would have loved if somebody would have asked me, what's the next step in the research? And of course, research scientists, professors, they love that question because that's the next step, you know. But being here today, first of all, I'm honored. I consider myself one of the young ones in the crowd because I've only been involved with the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement for 20 years. But there's 2 things that strike me. First is we shouldn't judge the past with today's eyes. You know, you listen to, oh, why didn't do that in 75? Why didn't they think of that? Well, that was 1975. And the reality in 75 was much different. And I'll talk about the program that I oversee now, Chapter 30. In 1975, the lifestyle of the Cree, and of course I wasn't there, and Nadia, bear with me as I explain it the way I understand it, is the families would get to the end of the dock in August, and they'd either leave the dock by canoe and canoe for several weeks to their trap line. They'd be there all fall harvesting fur. They spend the winter there hunting moose. They'd stay there till goose break, and in spring, when everything was melted, they would canoe back to the community or to the assembly point where they would socialize because there was fish in the lake and everybody could be at the same place at the same time. That was the only time where everybody could be together because that's the only time where there was enough resources in food at the same place to sustain several people. So running the program in 75 was easy because you look at the family, oh, there's the trapper family, they're at the dock. And suddenly they're gone for 8 months. And 8 months later, they come back and there's another kid or one less. But the family's back, they've got skins, you know exactly where they've been, what they've done. My second point is exactly that. It's 50 years later, the trapper family has a F-150 truck. Their trap line is 42 miles from the community. They've got 3 kids in hockey. They've got 1 skating. They've got assignments. They're on the board of this. They're on the board of that. They're involved in their community. And they go hunting and trapping the best they can while playing the role in the community. The lifestyle has changed completely. And as a wildlife biologist trained in conservation of species, now I see my job as a conservation of a lifestyle. How do we maintain the lifestyle of the traditional Cree hunters, knowing that traditional Cree hunters today is not the same as 1975. It's totally different. And the agreement, it was mentioned earlier today that the agreement, Chapter 30, was changed in 2019 with Complementary Agreement number 27. And every time we've changed it, I'll argue this. Of course, I could criticize my own organization, but every time we've changed the program, by the time we get the agreement signed, we're already behind. You know, it takes 7, 10 years to get everybody on par for the new changes. And then it gets on the table, and then you implement it, and you go, oh, crap, we didn't think of this. Oh, shoot, we forgot that. Oh, we should have done this. Why didn't we think of that? Of course, it's been 10 years since the last time. So one of the challenges, and to me, that's, in terms of research needs, I would say, one of the hardest thing and the most important thing is, in French, we would say veille stratégique, is to look at the environment and say, hey, my mission is to change a life, is to support or conserve a lifestyle that is changing. So I can't be afraid of change because the exact nature of my job is to support something that is changing. And, you know, there was talk of changing the agreement, the amendments to the convention, but the Cree traditional lifestyle is so different today than what it used to be. And to me, that's been, I would say, my greatest joy is going and spending time on the land, but also my biggest, surprise is to see how fast it's changing. And of course, I'm involved also as a hunter down south. I've worked with several organizations with similar missions for non-Aboriginal. And everybody talks about the challenges of getting youth on the land, the challenges of getting people involved with traditional activities, hunting, fishing, trapping, and so on. And the Crees are no different. They have the same challenges, you know. The kids will choose their iPhone before they'll choose a gun. It's not an Aboriginal problem. That's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of evolution, and the lifestyle is changing. And maybe we shouldn't be scared of that. We should just accept that this is part of the game, you know. And to me, I think one of the challenges in research is making sure we wipe our eyes every day and forgot what we were told yesterday and look and see where is it today, and try, if we can, try to anticipate where it's going to go tomorrow. So what we do today is in provision for what's going to happen tomorrow, not for what was good yesterday or the day before, because that's likely not there anymore. So those would be my 2 comments.
Amazing. Thank you, Serge. I'm really enjoying listening to all 3 of you, and I'm seeing some kind of themes arising with what all 3 of you have said so far, and also kind of harking back to I think it was Harvey's comment in one of the panels this morning, where he kind of ended his talk with a call for research into the treaties, like a almost renewed a look at this point of 50 years on from 1975, almost like a refreshed research engagement with the treaties, how they've been implemented. And all 3 of you have kind of given examples of the challenges that have come with implementation, the challenges that have come with gathering data about this. And I'm wondering if any or all of you would like to comment on maybe how you see that moving forward. As Serge, you were just saying, looking to the future, what is the kind of information that we would want to gather at this point in time about the last 50 years? And what is that going to do moving forward? Where do we see this kind of vision of research going into the future as I myself am kind of part of a new generation of learning scholars who are taking interest in Istchee and researching these kind of things. And so, yes, I'm wondering if you almost have any advice for the up-and-coming researchers. I know there are a few others in the room today. So, yeah, if any of you want to start, please feel free.
If I may, Serge is mentioning a good point. There is a lot of changes in the lifestyle, but that often comes with the changes on the land. There's a lot of changes on the land, you know. We see that, we hear that. The environment team are often, you know, assisting communities. They're hearing the trappers. We were just in OJ hearing about, we're starting you know, a mapping exercise with Eeyou, Istchee, and really planning the land with the trappers. And we're hearing these kinds of concerns, like I can't go hunt, I can't practice my traditions, my activities. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere left to go. And I'm just thinking of one case where we were informed of from OJ. So there's a lot of also impacts on the land, and that, you know, necessarily is things weren't like they used to be, for sure. It changes, but we have to find a way to maintain that that our culture. C'est aussi simple que ça. We need to find a way to do that and maintain, you know, the traditional knowledge, the culture, the Cree way of life on the land. And that would require understanding what is needed to be able to do that. What is a threshold, you know, of when is it not possible to practice fully our traditional way of life and our traditional practices? Do we know where that threshold is? When is enough disturbance? When is disturbance too much? When is this disturbance okay, you know, to be able to maintain that? Where's the line? Where's the balance? And that's a question that I've been always asking, and it seems very difficult. And a lot of it, I guess, comes from research. And I just want to mention here, of course, we need some research, but that kind of research, I think, is the kind of research that belongs to the Cree, and that should be Cree-led. But cumulative impact, though, I would say, is something that is not researched enough. We don't have there's pieces of information everywhere, but it's something that needs to be done in a way that's coordinated and that benefits, you know, that question, or that can answer that question. In the JBNQA section 24, I always come back to that because I like that conservation principle, the definition of conservation principle. Sorry. And in the JBNQA conservation, there's all kinds of different definitions of conservation, but conservation in section 24 is a pursuit of the optimal productivity of ecological systems. I like that because I think that's what we need to be doing in terms of maintaining traditional way of life and practices on the land. We need to always pursue the optimal productivity of ecological systems. And if we can't do that, or we're not able to do that, that means we've, you know, crossed the line. And we have a couple of our trappers that are in that situation today. So yeah, I'll stop here.
It must be me, I suppose. That is what Serge has decided. When the Naskapis signed the Northeastern Quebec Agreement, they got quite a lot of powers, they got quite a bit of money. The thrust of the Northeastern Quebec Agreement was to incorporate the Naskapis into the mining economy of Schefferville, but to incorporate them in a way that was superior to the way they had generally been ignored during the preceding 20 years or so. Since the Naskapis had received power and money, they decided they should take a look at potential economic development. And so Naskapi Development Corporation, and Naskapi Development Corporation is sort of the Naskapi version of Makivik. It's the corporation that administers the compensation received under the Northeastern Quebec Agreement, and the Naskapi Nation, what was originally the Naskapi Band Council, is the local government. And the two of them decided that they would collaborate in a review of the resources of the Naskapi territory under the Northeastern Quebec Agreement with a view to identifying potential economic developments. A very thorough study was done, but it didn't really lead anywhere. And one of the reasons why it didn't was that there was a lot of opposition in the region to any effort by the Naskapis to improve their situation. Now, in the long run, I think the Northeastern Quebec Agreement has been a great success just for the Naskapis to move to a new, large, decent community. But the paradox of that success is that the Northeastern Quebec Agreement became successful because the mining economy of Schefferville collapsed. The iron ore mines in Schefferville were opened in 1954. They thrived, but for a whole range of reasons, they had become uncompetitive and uneconomic by the early 1980s, and Brian Mulroney announced the closure of the mines in Schefferville in 1982. When he did that, most of the Schefferville businessmen, and they were men, they were not persons, they were men, left Schefferville. Hence, a lot of the opposition to the Naskapis' attempts to improve their economic situation disappeared. And within a number of years, the Naskapis were in very large part able to take over the regional economy. The airline was an exception, but that was taken over by Air Inuit, so that was kind of all right. And after the Naskapis had sort of taken over what there was, then mining became attractive again in the later 1980s. And it hasn't led where we hoped it might, but it did for a while, create the hope of prosperity. So really this gets back to one of the points that Serge was making, and that is really that the determining factors often turn out to be the ones you never thought about. And while I'm on the topic, I do want to say the economic development study done by the Naskapi Nation and Naskapi Development Corporation ended up being called a parcel of fools. And the reason for that was that we know very little about what the Crees, the Inuit, the Naskapis, and the other First Nations thought of the newcomers, the colonial powers. But there was one employee of the Hudson's Bay Company who reflected on the fact that very often, for reasons, all sorts of reasons, the Hudson's Bay Company was unable to supply the trading post at Old Fort Chimo, and it was trying to encourage the Inuit and the Naskapis to trap in exchange for the goods it could offer, but very often it didn't have those goods. And that employee said that the natives probably think we are a parcel of fools come hither to deceive them. And I think that that is still an attitude that in the 1970s characterized a part of the Naskapi thinking about non-native society. Serge, à toi.
Thank you. This is interesting because it makes you reflect a little bit on the good things and the bad things. And I'm gonna talk again for chapter 30. But you know what sucks about managing chapter 30? It's very simple. Is you have nobody to talk to, because there's no other chapters like that. There's no other nation that has a program that supports traditional activities like that. You know, the Inuit have a program with the Hunter Support Program. When I took this job, of course, being an academic, I said, who are my peers? And then you call and you realize that the closest allies I had was the Cree Trappers Association and Nadia's department, you know. And there's very few people. You try to find other nations that have similar programs. And the reason is, what can I do better? What kind of challenges do you have that you've resolved your issues and that you can help me when I face that same issue? And it's very difficult. And if I had a suggestion or a dream for the next 50 years, and one thing that I think is lacking now that's possible that probably wasn't in 75, is to have more regular, I won't say meetings, because meetings is too broad, but I don't know if convention or congress or conférence is the right word, but a place where people gather to share problems. I mean, most Cree meetings, and I'll look at Nadia because I'm sure she'll nod, but everybody's busy. You get on the agenda, you have 5 minutes. You say, this is how many people we support, this is how much money we spent, this is our board, this is our staff. My 5 minutes is over. I'm going to sit down, take 2 questions, and then move along because the agenda is busy. But very seldom do we sit and say, what is on your mind when you walk to work every day? And what kind of issues do you have? Because oftentimes, or the few times that I've been brave enough to mention some of the issues to my Cree friends, they'll say, well, it's simple. Talk to so-and-so. They have the same issue. And I said, how come I don't know that? You know, because we don't have a lot of forums to get together and say, I mean, be it HR issues, local problems, dealing with this, or some of the problems that we face in organizations always happen elsewhere at some point, you know. So if you find a solution or you face a problem, most likely somebody in the room or somebody somewhere has had that same problem and found that solution, you know. So I think in terms of how to make the future better for this agreement is trying to put together the people that work on the same topics on a more regular basis. And our program has implications with Cree trappers, with the Cree Health Board, with the education, with environment, with wildlife, of course, because our people hunt and fish and trap. So there's all kinds of fingers going to other organizations, and that to me is what could be done better, is more opportunities to get together and exchange on those issues. So I would leave it as that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
More meetings. I didn't want to say that.
Yeah, none of us want to hear more meetings. We have a bit of a hard stop at 5:30 today, so I wanted to make sure there's a little bit of time for questions from people in the room. We have about 20 minutes left, so plenty of time, I hope, to field a few questions if there are some.
Hello, my name is Miles. I work for the Coordinating Committee, so I know some people here. Hi, Nadia. First, just to Serge, there was a meeting recently with the, we met, well, it wasn't a large representation from our committee, but We had a meeting with the James Bay Advisory Committee and the Katsavik Environmental Advisory Committee. And it was just an opportunity for us all to get together one day to talk about our experiences with implementation stuff. So it does happen, and it is worth the effort just to touch base. We're not dealing on specific files or initiatives and policies, but we can kind of all get together, because you do lack that connection sometimes between all the groups sometimes, right, to make sure they're on the same page. When you mention, oh, it'd be nice to come to our meetings sometimes, it's a good idea, I agree. But I guess my question's for you, Nadia. You know, earlier today I participated in a meeting of Tanuvik. I don't know if we have any Makivik people here anymore. The Inuit were not happy. This is kind of outside the agreement, or maybe addressing a shortcoming in the treaty. The communities were not happy with how management, research, across all different domains, health, economic, and you know, wildlife, they weren't happy with how it was not meeting the expectations of the communities, right? So researchers would come in, whatever the topic is, ask their questions, off they go, and they never hear from them again, right? Or they're not able to prioritize their own research objectives. So they want to study whatever bird or fish or a health issue. They need a way to tell researchers, and it's often people down south. You know, I'm sure a lot of us here were grad students at some time looking for a research project. I remember being at that point, and you're just looking for some sort of in. So they're creating this organization, and it's kind of part of their larger, you know, renewed self-determination push. All their organizations all got together, and they said, we have to work together. So they're creating this body, and it'll look like it'll not only serve the communities, but also serve researchers. You'll have more successful projects. You'll have better outcomes, you know? Is that a thing? Is that a problem in Istchee? Do the Cree have a need for that? Do you think? Are there shortcomings in the, you know, the connection with the community and having a central body kind of help oversee all the different kinds of research that can happen?
Yeah, there is the same problems, and I'm glad my team is here, because they've been solicited many times, for many years, by researchers wanting to do research on this and that, and some of it are war sensitive. For instance, you know, when you talk about harvesting, governance over harvesting, for instance, these types of subjects are sensitive. It's been a long discussion, and we're just actually discussing this earlier during our planning session. And research is one that needs to be prioritized moving forward in terms of protocol in the territory, because there's just too much research all over, coming from everywhere, some at the regional level, some at the community level, some with even specific individuals, all of which are important. But if it doesn't come back to the communities, and if it's not framed to benefit the communities, and we've seen that a lot, there needs to be a real framework for that in the territory. So what the Inuit are doing is, I think, is excellent. They're building that momentum and that collaboration. I think the universities and the people responsible for these researchers, or the organization responsible for these research, need to be accountable as well in terms of how they approach communities and how they move forward with this information. It needs to be brought back to the communities. One thing we did mention during our meeting here is that information, that knowledge that people hold and that they share that willingly, but there's a value to that. And too often it's been taken and people leave with it and they don't come back. We don't see the results of that. And that's a change. I mean, I think we are all in the same there's initiatives that have been started with Cree Nation government to try to build that up. There's Chistassibee that has their research institute already in place. So that momentum is slowly being built. Like we need to, put more effort to better control the information and make sure that it's benefits the communities and that it's about back,
Yeah, I wish
up here.
Jedidat Matouche was still here because as an associate of the upcoming the Cree Nation Research Institute, I feel like she could maybe shed some light on the goings on with that at the moment. But I'm wondering also, Serge and Paul, if you have any thoughts on this question at all either.
Sorry, I was daydreaming.
Any thoughts on the question at all, or it's okay, no?
No. I'm retired. I have no comments on this. But if three eminent people think it's a good idea, then I would not disagree.
Well, wonderful. Thank you, Nadia. Do we have any other questions from the room at all at the moment? Wow. It's getting to that time of the day, I fear, where everyone's really tired and has asked so many questions. Is there anything else the three of you wanted to add on to anything you said earlier? We have a little bit of extra time. I have a couple of other questions in my little book that I can address the three of you with, but I want to give you the kind of open chance to say anything that you might want to add at all.
I'll ask my team here. Can you words of wisdom? Oh, about the last words about research, I think it's really about working together and making sure that people are aware of research of, what the community needs. Before you send your students in a territory, make sure you do that background work and understand what are the protocols, what are the channels, good channels of communication, what are the guidelines that do exist, and what are the priorities. It's not about benefiting the academic industry. It's about benefiting, governance and the pursuit of Indigenous governance and, needs.
Yeah, I'm wondering also if you have any thoughts on strategies for kind of the use of the data itself that comes up in research, and whether you yourself have come across any particular approaches to safeguarding data and making sure that data, that even if it's the raw data, stays within the communities itself after the research is done, and whether there's any kind of standard approaches you've come across, Nadia. Sorry, big question.
There's initiatives, policies that are being put in place, that are being developed to better control, what kind of research. The Nunavut process and act is actually, I always refer to that because I think they did a good job in really defining a law that ensures that not every, that research respects their communities and their priorities and, their ways of doing things. And I think that's what needs to be happening in the territory. So a framework and legislation that supports that is needed for sure.
Wonderful, thank you. Did I see a question in the chat that we maybe want to address to, or?
Yeah, okay, let's see what about this question in the chat. Désolé, je dois quitter. Non, c'est pas ça.
C'est pas une question.
Where is that question? Chat? Oh. What? I saw it, but it's not there anymore.
Well, while you're looking, I did want to mention about, data governance, had written note there, but
Maybe.
no, OPAC, sorry.
Okay.
OCAP. It's something that myself just educated me on lately. It's different principles, and it's about ownership of data, control. What is the A stand for?
I think it's access and
and
possession, right?
protection. So that's they just it was within a few weeks that they've and I like that principle. I think it needs to be out there a bit more, and people need to adopt those principles. So I would encourage people to take that course if they haven't, and build on that.
Yeah, I agree. I've also been on the OCAP website plenty, and it's a really, really wonderful resource. So yes, seconded that. Is that a question that I see at the bottom of the chat? What would be next? So there's a question in the chat that says, what will be the next steps to work together with Three Nations, priority visions, objectives for the future generations with the JBNAQ and NEQA? That was sent just now, wasn't it? Yes. Would any of the three of you like to address that one at all? A big question for the 9 minutes that we have left. Nadia's calling you in, Serge. Okay. Well, I mean, if we have no answers, that we can also we can wrap up slightly early to get ourselves out of here. I feel a bit like a school teacher who's keeping everyone back right to the bell. I don't know if Emily, you wanted to add anything on the end, or
No, I think it's.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
Who was talking?
It was just Emil, but
Okay. Next step for research. Is that the question?
I think it was next steps. It's in the chat. I've lost the chat. What will be the next steps for working together with Three Nations, priority visions and objectives for the future generations with JBNQA and NEQA?
Well, I think it's about communication and setting, I guess, the creating the opportunities the space, to be able to discuss that, the next steps, I guess, how we can improve that, how we can improve implementation, what is needed to improve implementation, or what tools should be developed to help governments or other organizations, external organizations, NGOs. A lot of them come to us as well, and what is needed to provide better, I guess, guidelines or protocols, or so that their work can be aligned with the community needs and respectful as well in terms of protocol. Share, exchange on our experience, for sure. We have a lot of experience with our staff here, with the communities, people coming in, doing their thing, but at the same time, we're doing the same thing. So these things do happen again, and I think it's just to create that space to exchange and address these challenges. So in terms of research.
Thank you, Nadia. From the two of you.
It's not really terribly relevant, but the thought that has been crossing my mind as I listened to the last exchanges is the final years of my career, I was actually the vice president of a mining company. There were those who thought I'd crossed over to the dark side, but that wasn't the way that I had seen it. But something that strikes me is the vast amount of research that is done in the James Bay Territory, amongst many other places. And most of that research is lost. It's done as part of mining projects, it's done as part of Aboriginal projects or whatever. And in many cases, they come to nothing. And the millions of dollars spent on research to get them as far as they got is usually lost. And it has always seemed to me tragic that some organization, and I don't know if it should be a university, a First Nation, a combination of all of them, but it seems to me tragic that no organization assumes the responsibility for at least preserving that data in some organized form and then making it available to others when it appears relevant to do so. And I think this is not really unrelated to the kind of topic that you have been discussing. And really no one, I think, would be better to do this than the Crees and the Inuit in their respective territories, with a little role for the Naskapis maybe, but I keep saying I'm not a Naskapi representative anymore, and they really are quite different in many respects from the Crees and the Inuit. But I think it would be wonderful if something like that could be done. And Colin, maybe someone like you would have a role to play in this.
Yeah. A registry of information, we were just talking about that. So everybody that has information on Istchee or a Cree people, please send your information to Graham, Jonathan. So, yeah.
Put the email address in.
We were just talking about that, the need to have really a comprehensive registry of all of the research that has been done. We have a lot in Alan's basement too. But there is that need to create that registry. I think that's, yeah, the intent behind the research institute that's in the works.
Yeah, if you can put one of their email addresses from your team in the chat and we can share it out and everyone can send it to you. Great. Any final thoughts or questions from the room at all? Doesn't seem it. Good day. I guess that just leaves us to say a big miigwech. Thank you to the three of you for being here today and for staying with us into the evening. It's got dark outside both here and where you are, Nadia, so it's getting cozy. And thank you also for the team for being with us on Zoom. We can see you all up there. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for staying right up until the end today, to the end of this panel. And join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists.
Another 20 years, and I don't know where to be.
So, that's the end. I mean, that's the end of today, not of everything. So thanks everyone to have joined us for this long day of conference. So it's been a pleasure to see you all today. I hope that you enjoy your experience. I don't know if Colin wants to have a final word or.
I'll just join in thanks, and if one sentence or two that Nadia spoke in this last session, that we have to be on the land, she said, to know the land. Without that, there cannot be, we cannot govern the land. And that, to me, is a challenge that brings together so many of the strands of the conversation that we've heard today and yesterday evening as well. The challenge of of youth being disconnected, feeling disconnected, many of them, with issues around substance abuse and some of the darker dimensions of disconnection from the land. One might argue, and many of my Cree peers in the communities argue, is a fundamental problem. So it's about governance of territory, reconnection for health to territory, and that can't happen without livelihoods, viable livelihoods and lifeways on the territory, and Serge has spoken to that quite eloquently. Changes are happening, have happened radically, and those of us who were sort of there in the 70s and on the land, and one of my great joys and passions in life has been in Cree hunting camps, and it's hard to hunt on rivers that have dried up. It's kind of sad to hunt on lakes that have been flooded. There's still many rich things about that life, but as Nadia and others, people that Harvey was reporting on from this morning have talked about, it's getting harder and harder in many parts of Eeyou Istchee to have the quality that once was. You know, you go on the James Bay coast, and where there used to be 5,000 geese in a bay, today there's 500. And these things are happening for reasons that are not good. And I think we maybe do need to engage with one another in more meetings. Not maybe more meetings. It's the kind of meeting. It's the kind of meeting that matters. Like, where do, we as non-Indigenous researchers, together with Indigenous researchers, together with people in the communities, where do we formulate an understanding of the problems that we share in common? And we know that some of these problems are one part of a community or an organization or a leadership is working toward economic justice in the form of revenue sharing from negotiating with mining companies and hydro and forestry companies and so on. At the same time, we understand that those activities are reducing access to the land and quality of life on the land. So these are really tough things to balance, and they're problems that are shared beyond Cree territory or Inuit territory or Naskapi territory. They're the shared problems now of humanity, of biodiversity decline, of rampant climate change that we heard plenty about from Charlie Watt to others, and the junior Charlie Gordon in the intermission was talking about why aren't we hearing more about these global problems and how our Indigenous politics are coming to grips with those problems. So the kind of meeting that might be needed is a kind of shared visioning, and then from that flows the agenda for the kind of research that's required, the collaborative production of the knowledge that can address this, so that we're not simply changing with the times, but we're actually seizing the times and making the path forward. That would be my dream for the probably limited number of years that I have left on this planet compared to many people in this room. But that to me is the project that we share, and that we I hope we can contribute to together. Yeah, echoing Emile, a huge thank you particularly those of you who have hung in here to the end, but indeed to everyone who came from near and far to share these conversations with us. It's been wonderful. Thank you.